Hello all, Rick here looking into a different type of Federation vessel than the usual, that, although it has a diminutive size, still counts as a starship, the Raven type. Starfleet exploration vessels tend to be large explorers that cruise off on extended missions, or smaller ships that have a focus on speed to conduct specific long-range missions. However, sometimes these sorts of vessels are not necessary, especially for a small science team that finds that it needs to leave the lab for whatever reason and conduct some field research. In instances like this, we have the Raven type modular long-range exploratory vessel. Well, I call it the Raven type as its class designation only appears in apocryphal materials as the Aerie class surveyor. The vessel was designed for Star Trek Voyager by Foundation Imaging and redesigns from Rick Sternbach. As a single appearance vessel, it was not overly thought out, leading to the basic design, but I think it works. It's a box with nacelles, and that is reflective of its simplicity. The original vessel was also drawn to look slightly too large, and the vessel had to have some windows removed and things resized to make it look smaller, more believably crewed by only 3 people. The Raven 2 was to have its Starfleet heraldry stripped away, as it was not a vessel operated by that organisation, but an independent science ship. Nevertheless, it was still a Federation one, so it had to retain the iconic technology. The class was to serve a myriad of smaller purposes, but primarily as a survey vessel or colony transport. Because of its function as a small science ship, it was created to be modular, a recurring feature of science vessels. For example, the Crossfield had convertible interiors, the Miranda had the roll bar replacement, and so on. The Raven class could house labs, research libraries, additional storage, or living spaces depending on its specific mission. These labs were pretty thorough and were on par with those found on major science ships, the only difference being that the Aerie class only had a couple of them. With a small crew, however, there was plenty of extra space for storage of materials and fabrication systems to create needed technology on the go. Interestingly, although developed for Starfleet, the class found its way into the service of other Federation organisations, such as independently funded science endeavours and colony logistics. The first of its class was designed from 2347 and launched in 2354, and it really does stand out among its contemporary vessels. Its squarer angles at a time when Starfleet was pioneering the Ambassador class as its poster vessel, and darker hull make it look like it belongs later in the timeline. It was developed at the Vulcan 40 Eridani A shipyards and the Frontier Flats on Denobula at the behest of the Federation Science Council. However, the Star Trek Adventures RPG also mentions that it was actually created first by a civilian agency, Newport News Shipping, and that Starfleet adopted the design in conjunction with them. This vessel is the earliest point we have in the timeline to represent the switchover from duotronic computers to isolinear based, with it appearing in flashbacks with isolinear circuitry. Although we do see ships like the Excelsior with isolinear systems, but also being duotronic based. This suggests that despite its small scale, its computer systems were state-of-the-art and based on the brand new tech that was experimental only a decade or two earlier. It also retained a holodeck and a recreational suite to make up for the smaller crew. The most infamous vessel of the class was the Raven NAR 32450, which was sent out in 2352 to investigate sensor echoes at the edge of Federation space. However, it went beyond its purview and crossed into the neutral zone to follow the threads of Borg incursions before Starfleet was even aware. Doing so led Magnus and Erin Hansen to realise that they could no longer call on the Federation's support after flouting their laws, So they continued on their investigation, even following a scouting cube into a transwarp conduit and ending up in the Delta Quadrant, being discovered by the Borg 4 years later. The diminutive vessel is only 90 metres long, 38 metres wide and 20 tall across 4 decks. Although 5 were viewable on systems displays, this is likely an error. The diminutive vessel was made to operate with a crew of only 2 to 10. However, for those who served as colony ships, it could house far more, although not in great comfort. Its hull was constructed of titanium alloys, in places a particularly hardy material useful for the structural elements of the starship. Its propulsion systems were powered by a single warp core with a top speed of warp 8 and a cruising speed of warp 5. This is slightly slower than a Danube-class runabout, which is its closest comparison. However, the Raven was also in service around 2 decades before the Danube, and quite a bit larger, so to me this lines up with the speeds of the time. Slower than an Ambassador class, but still an impressive speed for a tiny ship. Its 2 nacelles were LF-10 models, while its FIG impulse engines alone could accelerate to 0.9 the speed of light. The vessel was armed with only 2 Type 2 phaser arrays for defence and a single Mark 22 photon torpedo or probe launcher. Its deflector shielding was adaptable, but the CID-SS-3 system was not overly powerful. This was not a vessel meant for combat at all, and not really even made to outrun threats. While an exploration or survey vessel, it was not supposed to be the first one out there, as it were. It was supposed to operate in a safe space. Looking at you, Hansen family. The bottom deck was effectively a cargo hold, and it featured 8 doors to its holds as well as the landing gear. The Raven type included a shuttle bay which contained a single Type 6 shuttlecraft in the rear, giving it some more adaptability. The vessel itself was small enough and built for atmospheric flight, capable of planetary landings, despite the only 2 in canon we see being crashed. To be fair, this is why the shuttlecraft existed, as landing the starship was tougher than a shuttlecraft, and the crew might not necessarily be a highly trained Starfleet one. So, the Raven type had its own small niche in Starfleet, and even beyond in the Federation as a whole. The kind of missions it would be dispatched on were if a ship was needed to survey a star or asteroid, if you needed someone to go take samples from some planet somewhere, or even if you needed to transport some science team that needed to continue their research en route, then the Raven type was a perfect fit. As a diminutive ship, however, it really was not supposed to engage in dangerous missions, but would also see work doubling as a small colony transport ship. The Raven type is an interesting one and comparable to the Oberth, which was kind of a more dedicated version of this class. The Raven's duties were soon outclassed by other Starfleet science vessels, and its courier duties were replaced with the runabouts, so this ship sort of fades from use, at least in Starfleet circles. Still, I like the design, and the facilities available within it would make a great home ship, so long as you never encountered any danger. Thanks for watching this video on the Raven type. I've been Rick, and I'll see you next time for another. Goodbye.